I'm going to show you how to make the Koala Applique from the Aussie Animals Set from Kreative Kiwi. For this I'm going to be using a 5x7 hoop for two of the hoopings, that's for the body and for the head, and for the ear a 4x4 hoop. I've got some pins with heads on them, some masking tape, my squizzers, a selection of threads and my fabrics and batting cut to size. As this is going to be stitched onto something else afterwards, for the back I'm going to be using some cutaway stabiliser rather than fabric. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below, so please do take the time to have a look in the link, because it will give you lots of other information as well with regards to this set. We're going to start off by hooping and pinning our two layers of wash away stabiliser. Take your pin, place it on top of the inner hoop, push it through your stabiliser and bring it back round and through the stabiliser again, and that will anchor it and stop your stabiliser from being pulled down between the two hoop pieces. And you're going to do that on all four sides. The bigger your hoop, the more pins you will use. Load your neutral thread colour into your machine. I'm going to use grey throughout for this, along with file A, which is the body of the koala, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your fabric and batting. We're now going to add the backing, so turn your hoop over, place your backing fabric or your cutaway stabiliser over the outline, and then tape it in place. Turn your hoop over, place your batting over the front of the outline along with your front fabric on top of that, and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it, and that's also going to give you your placement outline for your belly fabric as well. Place your fabric for the belly over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Trim away the excess fabric from back and front of the hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim around the edge of the stitch line, taking care of course not to cut your stitches. You're now going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 4, and that's going to zigzag all the way around here and around the belly. Making sure that you've got your thread colour for the body of the koala loaded into your machine. You're now going to stitch round number 5, and that's going to do the satin stitching. Load your thread colour for the detail for the soles of the feet into your machine and then stitch round number 6. I've changed to a lighter grey for this. Load your thread colour for the satin stitching around the belly into your machine. I'm going back to dark grey for this. And then you're going to stitch round number 7. Load your thread colour for the little heart detail into your machine. If you don't want to stitch this, you can stop here. And then you're going to stitch round number 8, and I've loaded purple into my machine for this. We've now completed the first hooping, so we can free our work from the hoop. Turn your hoop over and cut around the edge, taking care of course not to cut your stitches. We're now going to trim up the raw edge here where this will join to the head later on. So take a nice pair of sharp fabric scissors and trim along the edge of the stitch line, taking care of course not to cut the stitches. And that's our first segment complete, and you can set it aside for the minute. We now come to the second hooping, and that's going to be for the ear on its own. So load that file into your machine along with your thread colour that you used for the satin stitching around your koala's body. Hoop and pin your 2 layers of wash away stabiliser. Pop your hoop into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for the batting and for your fabrics. You're now going to add your backing fabric, so turn your hoop over, place your fabric or your cutaway stabiliser over the outline and tape it in place. Place your batting over the outline on the front of the hoop and your fabric on top, and tape that in place as well. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2, and that's going to secure them all. We're now going to trim away the excess fabric and batting from both back and front of your hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim around the edge of the stitch line, taking care not to cut your stitches of course. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3, and that's going to do the satin stitching around the edge here. It'll do the zigzagging first and then the satin stitching. Load your thread colour for the inside of the ear into your machine. I'm going with my lighter grey for this, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. So that's the stitching for the ear finished. We can now free this from the hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim around the edge of the ear, taking care not to cut your stitches of course. And as we did before, we're now going to trim up the excess along this stitch line so that it's all nice and neat, ready to join in the next hooping. And that's the ear finished, and you can set it aside for the minute. We now come to the third hooping. So load your file for the head into your machine along with your neutral thread. There's two versions of the head. There's one with a headband, a flowery headband, and one without. I'm going to be doing the one without. Hoop and pin your 2 layers of wash away stabilizer as before. Then pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your batting and your fabrics. We're now going to place our fabrics, so turn your hoop over, place your backing fabric over the outline or your cutaway stabilizer, and then tape it in place. Place your batting over the front of your hoop and your front fabric over the top of that, and tape them in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure them. We're now going to trim away the excess fabric from both back and front of the hoop, so turn your hoop over and trim away, taking care not to cut your stitches. We're now going to pop our hoop into our machine and stitch round number 3, and that's going to zigzag down here, and it's going to stop where we come to join the body to the head. So make sure that you've got your thread colour for the satin stitch around the edge of the head loaded into your machine, and then stitch round number 3. We're now going to join the body to the head. You're going to line up this stitch line here on top of this stitch line here, starting where the zigzagging stops, and I'm going to pin mine in place. If you use pins, keep them right out of the way of the stitch line. I'm going to be putting mine hard up against the side of my hoop. And just to make sure that these edges, or these corners should I say, stay down, I'm just going to add a little bit of tape each side. Okay, we can now pop our hoop into our machine, and then we're going to stitch round number 4, and that's going to zigzag and join the body to the head. So remove your hoop and check your join, make sure that you're happy with it. If you're not, unpick the zigzag stitching, reposition the body, secure it, and then stitch round number 4 again. I'm happy with mine, so we're now going to stitch round number 5, and that's going to zigzag around the rest of the head and stop where we join the ear to the head. So we're now going to add the ear. If you're doing the larger sizes up from the 5x7, you won't have to do this step because you'll already have 2 ears on your head. So you're going to line this stitch line here up on top of this stitch line here between where the zigzagging stops. And again, if you're using pins, make sure you keep them right out of the way of your stitch line. And once more, I'm just going to put a little bit of tape just to hold those corners down. So pop your hoop into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag along here and join the ear to the head. Load your thread colour for the inside of the ear into your machine. I'm going with light grey again, and then you're going to stitch round number 7. Making sure that you got your thread colour for the satin stitch border around the head loaded into your machine. You're now going to stitch round number 8. Load your white thread for the eyes into your machine, and then stitch round number 9. Load your black thread for the eyes, nose, mouth and eyebrows into your machine, and then stitch round number 10. So that's all the stitching completed now, so we can free this from the hoop. Turn your hoop over and carefully trim around the edge, taking care not to cut your stitching or your fabric underneath. All that remains for us to do is to dissolve the excess stabiliser from around the edge of the koala on the back and front. So take a cotton bud, dip it in some warm water and just run it along the joins and then around the edge. And that's our koala finished. All you need to do now is to press it without steam. If you use steam, you'll find that your applique will wrinkle up because you've used wash away stabiliser inside. If ever that happens, and we all forget sometimes, just wash your applique, and once all the wash away stabiliser is rinsed out, it will all go flat again, and then you can just press it as normal. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as soon as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below. There will be 2 links, one to the individual koala only and the other to the set that it also features in, along with lots of other information such as where I get my supplies and some discount codes for you as well.